Hello and welcome to DSW's Endpoint Assessment for the Level 2 Housing and Property Management Standard. My name's Isobel, I'm a Product Owner at DSW and I'll be talking you through this standard today.
This recording is designed to give you an overview of what will happen during endpoint assessment, what to expect, when it will take place, but also how apprentices can prepare and what support is available. By the end of this, you should have a clear understanding of how the process will work and what the requirements are. And of course, if there are any questions or anything you need more information on, we'll show you where to go for additional support at the end of this recording.
Today we'll be discussing what the endpoint assessment process looks like, how and when it will be delivered, what happens during the assessment itself, and we'll go into more detail about the Level 2 Housing and Property Management Standard, how each assessment method works, and how it will be graded.
What is endpoint assessment? This is what we call the series of assessments an apprentice must take to prove they are able to do the job for which they've been training. These take place once the on-programme period is complete and the apprentice is deemed ready for endpoint assessment. Assessment design and delivery. DSW create assessment materials in line with robust design principles that are recognised by Ofqual. These principles are validity, reliability and comparability, manageability and minimising bias. This means you can be assured that our assessments are appropriate for the standard, that everyone will get the same experience, that the assessments will be consistent and fair, and that everyone will have a chance to succeed.
When does endpoint assessment happen? Endpoint assessment begins when the on-programme phase has been completed, required functional skills have been achieved, the employer and apprenticeship training provider agree that the apprentice is competent and the apprentice has met the gateway requirements, including the knowledge assessment. The next stage is called gateway, and it's when the apprentice begins preparing for the endpoint assessment process. What happens during endpoint assessment? The apprentice completes the assessments detailed in the assessment plan. There is still an expectation that the apprenticeship training provider will support the apprentice throughout the endpoint assessment period. This is to ensure that they're familiar with what's to come and so mock exams can be completed with them. In order to pass and be deemed competent, the apprentice must pass all of the assessments. This typically happens over a period of 4 months from the point they're approved for gateway. The Housing and Property Management Assistant Endpoint Assessment consists of 3 assessment methods which must be completed in the following order: portfolio of evidence, case study and interview. There are 29 assessment criteria which must be demonstrated through the portfolio. There are 9 assessment criteria which must be demonstrated through the case study and 11 assessment criteria which must be demonstrated through either the portfolio or the case study. The apprentice must meet 39 or more assessment criteria through the portfolio and case study to be able to progress to the interview. Any remaining assessment criteria must be met through the interview. The amplification and mapping document in the toolkit lists the assessment criteria and gives some guidance as to how the apprentice may demonstrate competence against each one. We'll look at each method in a bit more detail now. Portfolio of evidence. The portfolio enables the apprentice to reflect and present examples of their application of the knowledge, skills and behaviours of the standard. Compiled on programme with guidance from the employer or training provider, the apprentice will select appropriate evidence to meet the assessment criteria. The portfolio must be submitted at Gateway along with a completed referencing table. The portfolio should demonstrate attainment of the knowledge, skills and behaviours identified in the standard, show application of learning and skills, and contain substantial real work tasks completed, target setting, regular scheduled and recorded one-to-ones, periodic assessments against targets and 360-degree appraisals, reflective learning, observation and key tasks, and a behaviours log to demonstrate meeting the appropriate behaviours. The toolkit provides further guidance on what type of evidence can be included in the portfolio and a steer on how to ensure that evidence is sufficient, authentic, relevant and current. Context statement. When we refer to a context statement, we want to know what the apprentice has done in a specific situation: who, what, where, why and when. Build a picture behind a specific situation and from there pull on pieces of product and performance evidence to demonstrate exactly what was done in relation to the context statement. It's a great way for apprentices to bring all of their evidence together and give a more rounded picture of what they're capable of. They do need to make sure that they corroborate what they've said in their context statement with evidence, as it's purely anecdotal. Evidence types. One piece of evidence could span several past descriptors, so they could use one context statement and additional pieces of evidence to cover multiple descriptors. Conversely, there may be descriptors which require several pieces of evidence in order to meet them in full. One piece of evidence might be a single document, or it may be a folder containing a number of documents which link together. The portfolio should be a combination of anecdotal, performance and product evidence. More information on evidence types can be found in the toolkit. We'll go now on to types of evidence. As you can see, there is a wide range of evidence types, and this list is not exhaustive. You may find that the evidence you choose to provide is different to what appears here, which is absolutely fine as long as it's demonstrating the assessment criteria. Heavily redacted documents are preferred to excerpts, but both would be accepted, and we do ask that videos and recordings are a maximum of 2 hours within the portfolio, and they will need to be time-stamped in the referencing table. Evidence stipulations. All evidence must be clearly labelled, dated and referenced in the portfolio referencing table. All documents should be amended or redacted to ensure confidentiality and data protection are adhered to and that no GDPR breaches occur. Please see DSW's GDPR policy for guidance on how to redact sensitive data, as breaches may occur in a fail or remedial action. Any feedback from on-programme assessors should be removed. Evidence must be sufficient, authentic, relevant and current. Sufficient means that enough evidence must be produced to clearly meet all of the relevant criteria in full. Sufficient does not mean a mass of evidence, it simply means collecting enough quality evidence to demonstrate competence. Authentic means that you must be able to explain and substantiate the evidence put forward. It's important to ensure that only evidence that relates to the apprentice's own performance is submitted. There is a declaration to be completed at Gateway to confirm that evidence will be authentic. Any evidence must relate clearly to the criteria, the job role and the apprentice's performance. Avoid the inclusion of reference documents, training materials and other evidence that simply bulks out the portfolio. Current means evidence relating to knowledge, skills and behaviours that the apprentice currently demonstrates. These will tend to be the best pieces of work. Evidence should be gathered and collated towards the end of the apprenticeship programme. Case study. The apprentice should complete a practical work-based assignment during the last 3 months of their apprenticeship, which will form the basis of their case study. This will allow them to demonstrate that they are able to work with others to explore solutions and improvements to ways of working. It must include interaction with colleagues and tenants in developing and executing the assignment. The case study should be broad enough to enable the apprentice to demonstrate the 9 assessment criteria from the 6 competency areas assigned to the case study, as well as any of the 5 flexible competency areas which were not chosen to be met through the portfolio. During the on-programme period, the apprentice should keep a diary of their case study activity. Post-Gateway, a report should be produced in which the apprentice will be able to describe the situation and the task, identify the actions they took, and reflect on knowledge, skills and behaviours they used to complete the task. The apprentice must submit the following documents, typically within 1 month of Gateway: case study report with supporting evidence, case study diary and referencing table. Further guidance on these documents, along with templates to be used, is included in the toolkit. The apprentice may start working on their case study up to 3 months before they get to Gateway. However, they must not begin to write up their case study report until after their Gateway documentation has been approved by DSW. After completing the work on their case study, the apprentice is required to produce a case study report. This is a written narrative which provides an overview of the work and the activities the apprentice undertook. It's important that the evidence is attributable directly to the apprentice. It's therefore recommended that apprentices avoid using the term "we" when discussing their own contribution towards a task or tasks. The maximum word count for the case study report is 2,500 words. Any word count above this will not be assessed. The case study report should be supplemented with additional evidence to authenticate the apprentice's account and provide additional context for the assessor. It's of vital importance that the apprentice does not commence their case study report until after they have been approved for Gateway. Starting the report ahead of Gateway may invalidate the assessment and result in a non-progression grade being issued. The case study report, diary and referencing table should typically be submitted 1 month after Gateway. The case study guidance document in the toolkit provides apprentices with guidance on how to identify and write up a suitable case study. Case study diary. In addition to the case study report, the apprentice must also submit a diary. The diary should be written up by the apprentice over the course of the case study delivery phase and submitted at the same time as the report. The diary is used to record the apprentice's progress while working on the case study. It provides extra context and narrative so the assessor may ask questions about its content during the interview. The diary also provides the apprentice with the opportunity to reflect on the knowledge, skills and behaviours they have demonstrated. The diary may also provide supporting evidence against some of the specific assessment criteria. Where the apprentice believes this to be the case, they should reference the criteria within the diary and also include this mapping in the referencing table. It's recommended that the apprentice uses the case study diary template provided in the toolkit. However, they may use an alternative format if they choose to. The DSW template provides guidance on what to include in the diary for those apprentices who choose to devise their own. Evidence types. The apprentice will need to update the referencing table they submitted with their portfolio to map their case study report, diary and supporting evidence to the assessment criteria. All the assessment criteria within the competency area should be met through the same assessment method. Where a competency area must be met through the case study, this has already been completed in the referencing table. As with the portfolio, a blend of anecdotal, product and performance evidence should be included. Evidence may include, but is not limited to, diagrams, tables, charts and graphs, screenshots, photographs, extracts from policies or process notes, extracts from relevant legislation, copies or extracts from presentations, copies or extracts of industry journals or publications. Any of the stated examples are not included in the word count for the case study report. The report should be referenced where appropriate to the original source. The apprentice may use a referencing system of their choice, provided it's clear and easy to understand, with any reference to others' work clearly attributed. The apprentice may choose to embed supporting evidence within the main body of their report, or they may choose to locate these documents in a separate folder. Whichever method the apprentice chooses, it's their responsibility to ensure that all evidence is clearly mapped to the assessment criteria using the referencing table in the toolkit. Additional supporting evidence must be referred to within the report. Progressing to interview. The case study will be assessed by the independent assessor and the result will be released within 5 working days of the assessment taking place. The portfolio result will be released at the same time, as the apprentice needs to meet 39 or more assessment criteria through both the portfolio and case study to progress to the interview. Summative feedback on the case study will be provided via an assessment record. The assessment record will also show how many assessment criteria have been met for each competency area through both the portfolio and case study. The case study will be graded as either progression or non-progression. If an apprentice meets less than 39 assessment criteria across the portfolio and case study, the assessor will advise if one or both assessments should be resat. Within the assessment record, the assessor will note the competency areas which need to be addressed for a resubmission. Interview. The interview will take place between the apprentice and independent assessor and will last up to 60 minutes. The purpose of the interview is to assess up to 10 assessment criteria not met in the case study or portfolio, confirm the evidence seen in the case study and portfolio, and provide further opportunity to meet distinction criteria. During the interview, a maximum of 12 core questions will be asked. For each core question, the assessor may ask 2 follow-up questions. Follow-up questions will typically be used where the assessor does not yet feel a criterion has been fully met, or where they're exploring further to see if distinction criteria can be met. To ensure consistency, DSW holds a bank of core questions which must be used. However, the assessor may contextualise these to align them to the apprentice's case study or portfolio. The apprentice will be asked to verify their identity by showing the assessor valid photo ID. They will also be asked to pan their camera around to demonstrate they're in an appropriate environment for the assessment to take place and that they cannot be aided in any way. Apprentices are permitted to bring notes and a copy of their portfolio and case study into the interview. Audio and video recordings of the interview will be kept by DSW for quality purposes. These will be securely stored and then destroyed in line with regulatory and GDPR guidelines. To pass this assessment, the apprentice must meet all remaining assessment pass criteria that have not been evidenced in the case study or portfolio. The interview will be graded as fail, pass or distinction. Grading. The 49 individual assessment criteria are grouped into 24 competencies, for example, communication. Each competency contains between 1 and 4 assessment criteria. The final grade is calculated by adding up the number of assessment criteria that have been met, not met, or exceeded within each competency area. The grading is carried out in 2 stages as follows. Stage 1 is scoring the assessment criteria. Each of the individual 49 assessment criteria will be graded as met, not met, met, or exceeded based upon the descriptors provided in the amplification document. Stage 2 is scoring competencies. Each of the 24 competencies is given a grading based upon the number of assessment criteria which have been met, not met, or exceeded within that competency. As the number of criteria within each competency varies, a calculation, which is shown on screen now, is required to work out the score. Calculating the final grade. To achieve a pass, the apprentice must fully meet all 49 individual assessment criteria. To achieve a distinction, the apprentice must meet all 49 assessment criteria and achieve an overall score of exceeded in each of the 24 competency areas. If a component is graded as a fail or non-progression, the apprentice will be offered the opportunity to take a resit or retake. A resit does not require further learning, whereas a retake does. The assessor will decide whether a resubmission is needed for the case study report, portfolio, or both, based on where the unmet assessment criteria are allocated. The decision will be based on the evidence the assessor has seen, ensuring that it won't be unnecessarily difficult or extraneous for the apprentice. If the apprentice fails the interview, the apprentice will need to resit the full interview, not just the outstanding assessment criteria. The apprentice's employer will need to agree that a resit or retake is an appropriate course of action and should assist the apprentice to create a supportive action plan to help them prepare for a resit or retake. Resits and retakes are not offered to apprentices wishing to move from pass to distinction. DSW are committed to providing apprentices who have additional support needs with a range of adjustments to reduce any disadvantage that a disability or physical or mental health condition may cause during endpoint assessment. The reasonable adjustments and special considerations policy and form are available to download from the DSW website. Thank you for watching. We hope this has been helpful. As always, we're happy to help if you have any questions or need any more information, so please do get in touch. You can email us at info@dswapprenticeships.co.uk or give us a call on 01302 760 008. Thank you.